my name is Elena Garidis, and I'm the CFO and one of the co-founders of Defy Trends. We are a platform that aggregates data from the internet and the blockchain and helps you learn more about crypto and make data-informed crypto and NFT investment decisions. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. That was perfect. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here and welcome. Welcome to Miami Lit.
Oh, I can't wait. Miami lit.
Oh, you're so kind. I'm so happy to have you here. And before we dive into the big questions with DeFi Trends, I just want to talk a little bit about you and your background and how you got to be involved with this awesome company.
Yeah, sure. So my background professionally
Mm-hmm.
is in traditional finance. So I was working in New York in one of the big banks at JP Morgan and learning all about the economy and different financial products and just the greater e- financial system globally. I was in the international private bank. And that's when I stumbled upon crypto separately from my work and started learning about decentralization and Web3 and just crypto as an alternative to the current financial system and started getting really into it and just generally the ethos that decentralization presents and can also give power back to the
Right.
participants. And it's all about transparency.
That's
And
what hooked me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just really refreshing because
Right.
we have these systems that have been established, whether it's political, social, or financial, that seem just kind of a given,
Mm-hmm.
a default. And now to have an alternative to that, wow, that's really empowering and really exciting.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of shifted my attention into the crypto space. And then, yeah, with DeFi Trends, I met the founder, Imgesu Seaton, while I was in Mexico. And we just started nerding out about crypto. And she showed me this app that she had been building that I'll tell you more about later. And it just felt like the right thing to for me as a next step. And that's how I ended up where I am now.
That's so cool. I love that. How and coming from the financial world where you're coming from, the very traditional financial world, was it easy to transition to something like this with the idea of being decentralized?
Yes, I think for me, the bigger transition was going from working at a large corporation to starting a startup from scratch.
Yeah.
But also, the crypto world is almost like the polar opposite in terms of culture from the traditional finance world, which is still, as the name suggests, pretty traditional and in a lot of the ways that you interact with people, that you learn, and that you communicate. Versus the crypto space is a lot closer to the tech world and a lot less formal. And we started going to conferences, and everyone was, young, into the same type of music, into the same
Yeah.
traveling, and then of course into crypto. So it was a completely different experience. But in terms of finances, I think that there's still a lot of overlap, especially when you look at DeFi, like
Hmm.
decentralized finance. They also have derivatives and lending and a lot of similar concepts, just
Right.
translated to crypto. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of differences as well.
Yeah. It must be like such a vast, two different worlds, but you were able to navigate them so easily. That's amazing. I think the big question that's on everybody's mind nowadays, and you let me know what you think about this, is we hear all this talk about governments now
Hmm.
stepping into this world. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, last week Biden finally released his executive order, which everyone had been waiting on. It's it's something that keeps us at the edge of our seats for sure, because obviously governments globally aren't just going to sit on the sidelines and have already started. doing a lot of research and especially into central bank central bank decentralized currencies, CBDCs. Um, I think let's just take a little bit of a US centric perspective since we're in Miami.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, the government definitely sees the potential that crypto has, and it wouldn't be smart to create such stringent rules that would drive innovation out. Because the crypto world is so global, we don't have
Yeah.
qualms moving to a different country. So it
That's a
would,
good point.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, they're also, of course, concerned about illicit financial activity or that cryptocurrencies might challenge the US dollar as, the world settlement currency. And the third, their favorite subject, taxes.
Yes, that's the big one.
Yeah. So I think that those are, I mean, also from the report, those are going to be the three major points where they're going to try and find regulation that will kind of be that middle ground between keeping their dominance and also allowing for innovation. I
Right.
do think that we need some regulation, just for crypto to survive long term in the current social political,
Right.
frameworks that we have. But of course, just like a lot of people in crypto, I'm wary about too much government oversight because, the whole point is that it's decentralized.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
It's definitely an interesting time to see how all of that gets navigated because I agree with you. I mean, it feels like it's no man's land right now. So
Mm,
a bit of order might come in handy, but it takes away from that big thing that attracted so many of us, which is decentralization.
exactly. And
Yeah.
what you say about no man's land, on the one hand, it's good because it allows for flexibility.
Right.
But also on the other hand, right now, the SEC, for example, is regulating through litigation. So they'll just start suing companies
Right.
even though there's not really clear regulatory guidelines. So
Yeah.
obviously that's a lot of uncertainty for companies in the crypto space.
It's exciting times to say the
Yeah.
least. Very exciting times. So let's jump into Defy Trends, this amazing company that you all have going on. We're so lucky that you brought to Miami too. I feel like it fits here,
Oh
right?
yes.
Yeah. So, before we get further into it, what made you guys want to make Miami its home?
Yeah. So we were all kind of digital nomads, the founders, and co-founders, and looking for a new home for our company. And Imgesu, the CEO and founder, she had just been to the Bitcoin 2021 conference and really felt the energy of the city and how many people were moving here and funds moving here and companies. And I mean, I think everybody can feel that, how
Yeah.
dynamic the city is. And so she was like, let's go to Miami. Miami's the next, crypto hub. I'm telling you guys. And so we were between a few cities and we just visited in August to check it out. And we loved it. And we never really looked back.
Yay.
And then in September, which is when most of us moved here full time, we were taking part in the Startup Showdown, which was hosted by Panoramic Ventures, one of our investors now. And we didn't know this at the time, but it was a really big event here in Miami for the crypto space and the tech space.
Right.
Um, and so it was just a fabulous, super fun event that brought together all of these different groups from the tech world. And so we got to meet everybody and we were met with so much excitement and open arms and people who were genuinely curious to find out more. And that really has set the tone. And so that's when we were sure that we made the right decision.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. And I'm sure you've all had like great experiences so far. I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just really amazing people down here.
Yeah.
We're also part of a few different groups, like Women in Web3, which is led by Michelle Abbs, which is an incredible community of women who come together to learn more about anything crypto, NFTs, DeFi, DAOs, like their startup communities, like the Shrimp Society or Guava Empowerment. There's just so much happening here. Um, there's no
Wait,
time to get bored.
guava as the fruit?
Yes.
That is so cool. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to look into that one because I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, you should take a look for sure.
Okay.
It's a Miami native startup accelerator and also focused on women empowerment, but also bringing women and men founders together too. So,
That's really
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely take a look.
Yeah. And we'll link it down below for everyone else who's just as curious as me. Yeah. So, Defy Trends. Tell us about what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, so we are super passionate about data. And to give you a little bit of background,
Hmm.
how this all started, as I mentioned, I met Imgesu Seaton in Mexico when me and Daniela, now our other co-founder, were working remotely there during the pandemic, and she is a data scientist. And so she had been working on these prediction models to forecast global migration trends.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
she was at the UN, so that's why it was relevant. And using some of those same ideas and putting it onto the crypto market. So we kind of started using her app and trying to figure out which coins to invest in. And we just got a lot of interest of people asking us, hey, can you teach us more about crypto? How do you know which coins to look at, which coins to invest in? And we realized that there's this big gap
Right.
between people who are interested in participating but don't really know where to start. Or maybe they have an account on Coinbase and have bought some Bitcoin, maybe some Dodge, but really don't really know how to
It
make
could be
decisions.
overwhelming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's some data out there for sure, but when you don't know how to use it, it becomes useless. Like data is only as useful as when you know what to do with it.
Right.
So at DeFi Trends, what we're building is this all in one platform that has aggregated news, so you don't have to go to like 5 different websites, educational module, which Daniela is designing, and then the meat of the product, the data. So we aggregate data from a different sources. So for example, one of the is social media data. So we scrape all of Twitter, Reddit, YouTube comments, etc., and we use an AI to identify different words. So we can say, oh, this and this many people are talking about Bitcoin.
Right.
The sentiment is positive, the sentiment is negative.
That's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, so you don't have to scroll through Twitter for hours, you
Yes.
know? And social sentiment is really an impactful driver, especially in crypto.
Right.
And then we also have other data, like we use market data and on chain data. So in crypto, everything happens, not everything, but a lot of transactions happen on the blockchain, which is open source, so anyone can access it.
Hmm.
So we ingest that data and we process it, and we basically present our users with these indicators that can give you an idea of how much activity is there for this certain coin, like how many people are trading it. Are people who are holding this in their wallets making a profit or making a loss? For example,
That's a very important one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also what's called whales, which you might be familiar with, individuals or companies that hold large amounts of crypto and can move the market. So tracking them. So we basically aggregate all of that in the platform and make it look really nice. So we're heavily focused on UI,
User friendly.
user friendly,
Yeah.
and present it to you in a way that's digestible and actionable. So you're not overwhelmed, like you said,
Hmm.
but you can learn how to actually make better decisions based
Right.
on data on your own instead of following an influencer blindly.
Exactly. That's one of the things that attracted me to your company. Well, actually, two things. How user friendly it feels. So, like when you go on the website, everything's pretty transparent, very straight to the point. There aren't all these like distractions,
Mm.
and then the fact that the educational component is there, where if you were to engage, you know that you're learning something. You're not just, like you said, following blindly, like this person told me to do this. And I think that is so, so important. And it gives so much value to what you guys are doing, not just for you, but for the user too. Yeah.
That's our goal.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with decentralization. If you give the power back to the people to make their own investment decisions, to make their own um, just any types of financial planning decisions,
Right.
but you don't give them the resources to do so, that's a lot of responsibility. And so, in order to really get engaged, it's better to learn, like you said,
Right.
and understand. So that's our mission. And we're also launching a token soon so that you can actually earn tokens when you complete the educational models
Oh,
and when you
nice.
interact with different parts of the platform. So it's like a game almost, it's more
Yeah.
fun and engaging.
That is so, so cool. I
And
did
there's,
not know that. That's a surprise.
yeah, we're really excited about it. We're launching next month in April. I'm happy to dive more into it if you want.
Yes, please. Is that going to be accompanied by the app that you mentioned, or those are two different things?
Yeah, those will
Okay.
be very much integrated.
Okay. Yes, tell me more, please.
Yeah, so the token, it's called Defy, which makes sense.
Which I love the name, by the way.
Thank
That
you.
name is genius. Not just what it stands for, but the actual word and what you're all doing.
Thank
It's
you.
yeah, kudos to you or whoever, all of you who agreed upon that name. I love it.
Yeah, we love it. I mean, exactly what you said. It
Yeah.
just means a lot to us in a lot of different ways. Um, Obviously, the trends of the market, defying them, the wordplay with decentralized finance, and then
Mhm.
also defying in terms of being, all female founding team in
Yeah.
tech and crypto. We want to kind of be a trailblazer so that it's easier for others to do the same thing.
Absolutely. For sure.
But yeah, so the token that you
Mhm.
asked about or I mentioned, it's really exciting to us because we want to make it as fun, engaging, and valuable to our users as possible to engage with our platform, to learn more. And so when you're a user on the platform, you can actually earn the token, as I mentioned, by completing the educational modules successfully, by submitting original research, maybe if you're a little bit more advanced, or by interacting with different parts of the platform. You can also use the token to pay for the platform. So you'll get a discount if you do that, and you learn about how to, transact on different chains. So our token is on the Avalanche chain,
Oh, cool.
which is one of the hottest new chains. But, there's a lot out there. So maybe a lot of people don't know about it. And then you can also stake it, which means, lock it in a wallet in order to participate in governance. So you can vote on what are the new features that you want to see, what do you want to see improved on the platform, so you can have an active say. And the last use case for right now is also staking to earn. And in the future, we have a lot of really cool things coming up, like copy trading and swapping on the platform itself.
Oh, nice.
So there's never going to be an end to the innovation, to the platform and the token.
That's the most exciting part. It's like as cliche as it sounds, but the sky's the limit,
Right.
right? And uh, yeah, I'm trying to picture how all of that would work. It just sounds like it's very inclusive to the whoever decides to use it, and make it exciting for them.
Yeah. Um, I love that you mentioned that because that's one of our core values, inclusivity
Yeah,
and accessibility. So everything that we do with that in mind. How can we make it the easiest for you to participate in a
right.
meaningful way?
Yeah, and that's so important, because so many people are not just overwhelmed, but intimidated almost when it comes to crypto and this whole thing. Especially women, it feels like. Has that been the experience for you and everyone on the team?
Um, it depends. So, on the one hand, we are also involved with a lot of women who are very eager to learn more or are already making waves in the community. So, I think there's a ton of interest,
Yeah,
especially on the NFT artist side, but also in general. But then on the other hand, when we go to, more mixed crypto events, it's still primarily men there, and
right.
you don't see that much participation of women. And I think it's getting better, but there's definitely still a very broy culture.
Right.
And that's not always the most comfortable space to learn for people who aren't into that culture, which a lot of women aren't. And yeah, it is intimidating also because, crypto is kind of the mixture between finance and tech, right? Both of those industries are pretty heavily male dominated.
Exactly.
Although finance is, I feel like, kind of getting there. So we have a lot of work to do, but a lot of women are ready to roll up their sleeves and excited to change the tide.
Definitely. It now's the time, right?
Yes.
As they say.
Yeah.
Um so diving into women in crypto, you touched upon the intimidation component to it. But what other obstacles do you see that keep women from coming into the crypto space? And men too, not just women.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that as you said, there's some obstacles that definitely apply to both. Um, One thing that I've noticed just being an entrepreneur in the crypto space where you interact with it in a different way. So instead of just being online, we also go to a lot of conferences and we talk to other founders and players in the industry, is that there's so much that goes on at those conferences and interpersonally because it's still pretty small,
Yeah.
that you wouldn't necessarily understand or get immediately if you're mostly hanging out on Twitter or the exchanges.
That's a good point.
So getting involved into communities is really a great way to overcome that barrier, of making it more personal, more approachable. And yeah, and I think the second one is learning to think in a different way from traditional financial markets where
Yeah, that's a big one.
yeah, exactly. So it's scary sometimes because crypto
Yeah.
markets are super volatile compared to traditional markets. So, and a lot of people don't have experience in investing in general.
Mhm.
So now that you have direct access to investing, which is something that Robinhood kind of did for stocks, um, and maybe not having the education or not knowing who to ask, and there's so much fear around scams and
Yeah.
hacking as well. I think that holds a lot of people back from investing their hard-earned money out of maybe fear and uncertainty, of what will happen to it and not knowing what they're getting into.
Right.
So I really think it's mostly about education and tools, like the lack
Right,
thereof.
right, right. I mean, it makes so much sense, because once people feel like they know enough to dive in, which you are providing them with that educational component and the right tool that is user friendly, then all of a sudden all these obstacles become, um, not obstacles. So it just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah, and let's not forget that crypto is still relatively new. I
Hmm.
mean, now in this past year, we've seen a massive, I feel like, increase in crypto being talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, in Miami, you drive down the street, there's at least three billboards talking about crypto.
Right.
And, companies like McDonald's, Walmart. JP Morgan, all across the
Right.
board.
We saw that NFT commercial, right, during the Super Bowl. Do you
Right.
remember with the
Yeah.
what's his name? Larry David.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big thing for, to play during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and there were like three, four commercials about crypto.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't just the one. There were
Right.
more.
So it's still new, and people are usually wary about new things and approach
Right.
it with more caution. But I
Right.
think we'll get there.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
agree. As more education comes up and people start being able to at least feel like they know more, things will move along. But let's talk about NFTs. Um, what can you tell us about NFTs? We pretend I know nothing, which I know very little. So it's
Hmm.
not, you don't have to pretend that much.
Um, a lot of people ask about NFTs
Mhm.
because there obviously was this huge NFT boom the past few months, starting 2021. I keep skipping 2021 in my head, thinking
Right.
2020 was just last year.
I think we all have that issue.
Yeah.
It's like time. There was some weird time warp, and time went by really fast, but stood still at the same. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh, I think I can totally relate, and probably most people listening can relate to that
Yeah.
too. It's a really good way of framing that.
Thank you. It's the only way I can come to terms with what has happened the past 2 years.
Right.
It's
It's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
So NFTs
Hmm.
obviously stands for a non-fungible token, which means nothing to most of us.
Right.
But essentially what it is, it's a piece of code. So it's what we call a smart contract. So that lives on the blockchain, which is where everything in crypto lives on. So you can imagine this kind of like the smart contract, literally like a contract. So there's a set of rules, and when certain things occur, that triggers an outcome. So a lot of people associate NFTs with art,
Hmm.
right? So you have all these fun and amazing pieces of art, and then some NFTs where you're like, why is this worth $10,000?
Yes, I think we've all had that experience that you
Yeah,
look at it like, I'm not an art critic, but I'm pretty sure that's not.
exactly. But what is important to remember about NFTs is that it really is just ownership. So everything on the blockchain is recorded on the general ledger that's decentralized and distributed, which means that anyone can access, you know, who owns what, except, there's no names. It's just your
Right.
address, which is technically anonymous, and how much something is worth, etc. So if you own an NFT that's on the blockchain, it's like a legal contract that you cannot fudge, that you cannot
Hmm.
change or fake, that you own that specific thing, whether that's a piece of art or a piece of music or real estate or an identity document. So, for example, there's so many cool applications of blockchain, even in voting and real estate. So, anyway, bringing it back to NFTs, essentially what happens is that, let's say I create an NFT and it's a picture of something, my photography, and I
Right.
sell it to you, then there is a trace on the blockchain that I had the NFT for this and this and much amount of money, and I sold it to you, and now you own it for, and it's worth this and that. And I can build in certain things so that when you resell that NFT, the contract that I told you about in the beginning makes it so that I get a percentage of that sale.
Hmm.
So in the regular art world, usually what happens is artists
Yeah.
sell their pieces and then they get their money and that's it. Like
Yeah.
if the piece increases in value and sells for millions of dollars the next year, they don't see a penny of that. So with NFTs, because it's code, you can automatically code in that every time this item gets sold, you get a piece of that. And because you can verify that this NFT belongs to you, you can use it, for example, to access events like Coachella just released their NFT collection, which I'm excited about because if I'm not mistaken, it's the first festival to do so. So there's no fake tickets. Like I don't know, have you ever been sold a fake ticket online?
I have not, but I do know it happens. Yeah.
You're lucky.
Yeah. Um
So that wouldn't happen, right? Because you have that ownership.
right.
So NFTs are not art, but they're a way to prove ownership for art, for example.
Right.
Does
Which
that
it
make sense?
absolutely. So when we hear people say anything can be an NFT, that's why. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The other distinction that's kind of important. So if you think about, okay, so what's the distinction between a crypto coin
Mhm.
and an NFT? Because also crypto's also code. Um, is that if I have a Bitcoin and you have a Bitcoin and we swap Bitcoins, we don't really care, right? Because my
Mhm.
Bitcoin is exactly the same amount of dollars worth as yours. Like, I don't
Right.
care which of the 21 million Bitcoins I own. But if I have an NFT and you have an NFT, it's it's a different thing. Like if I had a Picasso and you had a different Picasso,
Right.
then the worth might be different. It's a different actual
There's a
item.
nuance in there.
Yeah, it's a unique piece of art. Like there's no two Mona Lisas, right? So that's where the non fungible means that you can't alter it. But that's one of the biggest distinctions from coins and NFTs that I thought was important to mention.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to process. That's why.
It's a lot. I
Yeah.
had to read about it and talk to people
Yeah.
so many times when I first started out because you hear it once, you're like, okay,
Mhm.
now I've heard it before. And then most of us forget it. And then you hear it again and you're like, oh, I remember this, and you have more context. So,
Right.
I mean, it depends on the person. Some people can just absorb things and immediately learn
Right.
it, but
Yeah.
I definitely need to think about it and go through it a few times.
I'm the same. I need to process things and twist it and reshape it in my mind so that it can really sink in. But I think you explained it beautifully. And what you mentioned about the artist being able to get a kickback, I think is so important because as art lovers, it's always you always hear or read about that story of the starving artist,
Mm,
the artist that became famous, quote unquote, after their death, or their work was profitable way later in life. And it seems like this way, that's a sure way to avoid those sad stories.
yeah. Yeah, I really think that it just gives artists a lot more tools and more autonomy.
Yeah.
Anyone can release an NFT, You don't have to have, I don't know enough about the art world, but you don't have to have connections to big galleries and
Right.
big curators and
Yeah.
um, this huge network of influential people.
Right.
If you have people that like your art, you can sell it online.
Exactly.
And you
I
can connect it to physical art too. You can
Yes.
connect NFTs to physical items.
Mm-hmm. Which is so so cool
Yeah.
because it feels like you're getting the best of both worlds. You have your physical piece and then you have your NFT that's going to live on the blockchain forever, hopefully. So I think it's a no-brainer. But we what you guys are doing is important to help other people understand that too, because
Hmm.
I it does take a while to sink in. To purchase this thing that you don't always have in your hands. It's not always tangible.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess most of the times it's not,
Right.
actually. And NFTs are obviously more qualitative. There's so many things that go into if people like it. Art can be subjective, but there's also a lot of more quantitative like measures what people look at when they decide to buy an NFT or not, especially if it's for an investment. So they look at, how many items have sold, how much interest is there, and that's where it's then comes in useful to have data. So because there's also a lot of rug pulls, if you've heard, in NFTs, which means people create NFT collections and then they have their sale and then they kind of disappear.
I've heard of that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to do your own research and really do due diligence before investing in a project. If you're doing it for, the investment
What
itself.
happens? This is a bit of a silly question, but what happens in those instances where the team disappears? Is there anything protecting the buyer?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Because you're buying a product, so to say, the
Right.
NFT, um, to have it technically, but most people buy it as an investment because they want the value to go up. But that's not really a promise that they can make. Actually, it's illegal. Well, actually, maybe not in NFT specifically. So scratch that. Anyway, so there's nothing really that you can do, especially if the founders of the project are anonymous, which happens sometimes.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So be careful with NFT projects that have anonymous founders. I mean, some of them become really successful, but there's like no way to keep them accountable. I've seen projects where that happened, where now the community is trying to revive the project, especially if some of the code is open source. But it's difficult. Like, it's
Yeah.
very harmful to a project's reputation to go through something like that and to recover from that. I personally don't know of an example, but there might be one.
Right. I don't
So,
either. I did hear, but I can't recall the name now. Of a project that it's in the process of being revived by the community.
oh,
Um,
okay, cool.
because the founders again disappeared, but people, through the power of togetherness, are able to bring it back. But I'll make sure to like link it somewhere so it because I can't recall. I'm sorry
Hmm.
the name right now, but
I'm
it's
curious
not
to
very
hear.
common at all, actually.
It's
Right?
difficult.
Yeah.
You mean to revive it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very competitive world out there with NFTs. Everyone's looking for the next new big NFT project. So, um, there are so many NFTs that launch every day, and only a few of them, become big. But it's not always the only reason to invest in an NFT. I have invested in NFTs for art before, or I have friends who had a friend that was like, "Hey, I know this artist," and they really liked the art and invested in it, and it actually did pretty well. But that's not the reason that they wanted it, because there's also now a way to hang it up on your wall. There's certain, I don't know if
Yeah.
when I was a kid, actually, we had these photo frames that would show our holiday photos.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
yeah. And so obviously the NFT frames are much better quality, and compatible with NFTs, of course. But, there are also other reasons to invest in NFTs other than simply for investment purposes.
Right. What would you advise someone that's kind of looking to get started as a collector or an investor? What would be the best first steps?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the NFT world, you're in the Discord world. So, Discord is kind of the chosen social media chat platform for NFT projects. So, getting familiar with Discord and starting to maybe get into one or two NFT Discord groups. And there's a few things to look out for when you're evaluating a project. So, one of them is the founders. Hopefully they're not anonymous, looking at their track record. Sometimes NFT projects have like really famous names, like successful artists or celebrities on board. That's always a really good sign for projects that are getting a lot of excitement. You can look at the community, see how active they are, how many members. So usually a lot of NFT collections have 10,000 items, for example.
Hmm.
So you want the community to be over 10,000 to make sure that, it gets sold out. You can look at, um, how they actually created the NFT. So are there different NFTs that are rarer than others? You can look at the story. So, it's like selling a story. What is
Right.
the point of the NFTs? Do they have anything special? Or is it just plain ownership? Sometimes it also gives you access to certain like membership portals or real life events, or um, there's this one NFT collection. I'm blanking a little bit on the name right now. Something with monkeys.
The is it the board
No, it's
ape?
not the
No,
board
right?
ape.
That's the big one.
Yeah, yeah. It's
It's
connected to this banana coin. And so
hmm.
every day this NFT spits out banana coins.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool and innovative. So you can sell those. So you can
You
make
sell the
money.
coins.
Yeah. So looking into this stuff, so utility in other
Right.
words. And then if you maybe, yeah, so that's what I would do when you're starting out. When you're a little bit more advanced, you can use tools such as on-chain analysis that I mentioned earlier, um, and kind of track the price versus how rare it is to see outliers, maybe find NFTs that are undervalued or overvalued. But yeah, those four things that I mentioned, I think when you're first getting into the space, looking at the team, the story, the utility, the art, and the community,
That
that's a
that's
good
really
place to
yeah,
start.
that's really good advice. And you broke it down in actionable ways, so I feel like it's not so such an unsurmountable goal. It's because it is, and I mean I keep harping on the same thing, but it's so overwhelming that
Yeah, it can be.
this part of the crypto world and crypto in general, it's so new that you just don't know where to go.
Hmm.
Um, so I want to talk a little bit about the app that you guys have coming. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so it's currently a web app. So, a web application that you would just access through your browser. But we're also working on a mobile app and Chrome extension. So if you're, for example, on Coinbase or Kraken or a decentralized exchange, wherever you trade crypto, you can have it overlay over there. But that's in the future. So let's talk about what we have now. So the web
Okay.
app. Yeah, so it's kind of, you can imagine like a portal for everything that you need to learn about crypto. So you can see how the market is doing every day. We update the information regularly, depending on what type of data it is. Some of it is every few minutes, some of it is every half hour. For example,
Oh wow.
we aggregate all the news. So you don't have to look. So we aggregate both crypto specific news, like Cointelegraph, and more traditional, like Bloomberg or even major news outlets who might have a story. And we tag it. So there's different categories. So if you're like, okay, I want to know all the news about Bitcoin today, or I want to know all the news about the metaverse today, you can filter for that and you can see what is happening. Like, oh, Adidas just announced they're opening a store in the metaverse. That might be interesting for you. So we have the news section, the aggregated news. We already talked about the education
Mhm.
and then the data. So we basically allow you to graph on a price chart, different indicators all in one chart. So you can have the candlestick chart, so to see what the price is doing of a particular coin, and then you can overlay a chart of the social sentiment, and you can overlay a chart on-chain activity
Oh
and
wow.
find patterns that way that might help you predict in your mind which coins you think will do well in the short term versus the long term. And so everything on our website, we have, if you hover over any type of indicator, it explains what is it that you're looking at. And if you still don't really know how to use it, you can go back to the educational section and learn where the data comes from, which is super important, and how to use it. And
Yes.
what does it mean? What even
Right.
is on-chain data, for example? And why should I care as a crypto investor? And to give you an example here, there's different types of coins. or coins versus token rather.
Mhm.
Do you want me to explain the difference?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So the difference between a cryptocurrency and a token is that there's different types of blockchains. So that's what we call layer ones. So Bitcoin is a blockchain,
Mhm.
Ethereum is a blockchain, Solana, Avalanche. So those are basically all like their own coding languages, if you think about it like that. And then there's different projects that use those ecosystems and build on top of that. So, for
Okay.
example, Defy Trends, we're releasing our own token on the Avalanche network. So we're not
Right.
creating our own blockchain. We're just creating a token that
To work on that blockchain.
exactly. It's just
Okay.
like if
I
you were to
understand.
code something in JavaScript.
Yes,
Like you don't create
exactly.
JavaScript from scratch.
Right. You use the tools that are already there to make your own creation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the cryptocurrencies are the native coins of those layer ones, those blockchains.
Okay.
So for Ethereum, ETH
Mhm.
is the native coin. And then there's tokens on top of that. So layer twos is what we call those, right? Because they're on top.
Okay.
So, for example, a lot of people like Dogecoin, which
Yeah.
is a meme coin. So that's built on Ethereum. So that's called a token.
Right.
Anyway, it's not so important to know the difference, but it can get confusing. There's really not such a major implication if you're just getting into crypto and deciding what to put your attention to. But anyway, for example, just bringing it back to how to use on chain analytics, for instance, is when you're evaluating a new layer one important aspect is how many projects are building there. Like, is this ecosystem growing? Are people interested in using this tool to
Mhm.
create companies and services and tokens around that? And this is all you can see on on-chain activity because it's all happening on the blockchain, which means it's public information, which means we can take it in, digest it, and present it to you in a way that makes sense.
Yes, that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
You do all the hard work and then we just get to like look at the information in a way that's easy and approachable.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's genius. It's awesome. I'm so excited for what you guys are doing.
Me too. I'm glad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'll almost be over the moon because this is um you're doing something that has implications in a grand scale for people,
Hmm.
which I think it should be the goal for anything, right? The purpose, the higher purpose.
Exactly. It's what keeps us going.
Right.
Because startup life is intense, and you need to believe in your vision
Right.
to really create something that adds value to people's
Yeah.
lives. And exactly what you're saying, we want to empower the masses because that's the only way that crypto and decentralized finance are going to be a serious alternative to
Mhm.
centralized finance.
It's going to be a real competitor.
Oh, yes. It already
Yes.
is.
You're right. It already is.
And that's why
Yeah.
all the governments are paying attention now.
Yeah.
If it wasn't a threat, then they wouldn't care.
They wouldn't. I mean, they didn't care a couple of years ago,
True,
right? All
exactly.
of a sudden, they're all paying attention. So there must be a reason. And I think that's also why now all of a sudden people are paying attention because they see that this is real and this is happening, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. It's going on.
Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Exactly. People say crypto is the future, but it's already
The
here.
future is now.
Right,
Right?
exactly. I actually have that on my wall in front of my
Really?
desk. The future is
I
now.
have it
No
too.
way.
Yes.
Oh, I love
I
that.
yeah. Oh my god, we should make that our slogan or something. You
Yeah,
know what? Maybe
exactly.
that'll be the title of this episode. I'll change it to
Okay, I like
yeah,
that.
I like it too.
The
Yeah.
future is now.
It
It's true.
is. It is. Yeah.
Um, and I think it's true in so many ways. Like obviously in innovation, it's true in personal life.
Right.
Like
And your
not
goals. I mean,
exactly not
we're so
procrastinating on your
used to
goals.
thinking about the future as something that's coming, But if we think of it as something that we can do right now, you're literally creating it every single day, every single moment, then it really lets you become aware of the fact that the future is not tomorrow. It's right now, as cheesy as that sounds. Um,
Yeah, but
but
it's true. I
yeah,
mean, you too. You're about to have your 1 year anniversary with your podcast.
I can't believe it.
Yeah,
So
congratulations.
thank you.
And at
Thank
some
you.
point, you just had to decide, like, I'm doing this now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, it was a long time coming. So
Mm-hmm.
it was as I was telling you before we turned on the mics, it was supposed to be a literary magazine, and that went on for like 4 years. That
Wow.
I couldn't, things were not clicking. And you brought up startup life a little bit ago. I mean, this is not a startup, but I feel like the ingredients are all the same. When you start something that doesn't exist, and you you're just going with your purpose and your gut, and things are not lining up. That's what it felt like for those 4 years, until I decided to pivot, and then all of a sudden it made sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And having the courage to pivot also and
Yeah,
redirect yourself.
that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Um, but startup life, um, how crazy, amazing, and rewarding is that?
All of the above. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very unique experience. And I feel super grateful to be in this position to be able to work every single day on a mission that I believe in with people that I admire and that, are also my friends. And we're getting so much feedback from the community. And we talked earlier about how amazing specifically the Miami community has been. The fact that we get to work with brilliant people like our developers and data scientists, and we can literally see this idea, like you said, something that didn't exist before, come to life. And that's super rewarding. And the other thing that I love is just the learning rate.
Yeah.
You're doing things that you haven't done before. We all the founders came in with our skill sets that we had, but when you're in a startup, you have to do everything. You have to do the accounting, you have to do the
Right.
legal, you have to do the sales, the marketing, you have to do the business development. I didn't have a tech background, so I had to learn everything from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And that's just such a gift to be able to feel that you're growing as a person and
Yes.
able to pass that value on to your users or your team, or your community. There's obviously also a lot of challenges around that too, because everything is new, especially as first time founders. Every challenge that we face, we first have to learn about it.
Hmm.
And sometimes you have to trust advisors.
Yeah.
But obviously, always doing your own research and making decisions without having 100% of the information can be stressful. And the important thing, I think, is just to learn from each experience and try to approach the next one with that knowledge in mind.
Right.
And yes, there's obviously a lot of uncertainty always in a startup. So it's a balance.
Definitely. What has been the scariest experience and the most rewarding? Two different ones. Not They don't have to be the same one, but I'm thinking about what has been like the lowest and the highest so far.
Oof. I really feel like every day is a roller coaster.
I can imagine.
I just remember in the very beginning, our first investor call, we were so nervous.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
and since then we've done dozens. So now,
You got the
it's
training
it's
wheels off.
exactly it's like a normal part of our day. Or we had our first B2B sales call recently with someone that we found through cold outreach. So, someone that we weren't introduced to, we didn't meet in person
Oh
or virtually.
wow.
So, that was also scary at first, but we know the value that we can bring. So everything is a little bit scary at first. Um, and you also asked about the most rewarding.
Yes.
I truly believe in celebrating like the small wins. When we won Startup Showdown, right when we started, that was super rewarding because we were so new and it was like the first time we got this big recognition and we got a big check on stage, that's super
Oh my
exciting.
goodness.
And it was a huge party and everyone was congratulating us. So it was just this new experience. But since then, we've had so many super rewarding things happen too, like releasing the first version of our beta and having people use it, or going into the community and teaching something about crypto and having people come up to you and say, hey, I learned something today
Yeah.
and thank you for that. Where can I learn more? That's what I think is most rewarding.
Those little moments,
Yeah,
right? That you think are so insignificant, but they really
but they're
put
the
things
most
in
significant.
perspective, right? Yeah. They
Yeah,
really let you know that that little grain of sand that you thought meant nothing is growing and growing. Yeah. That's so exciting.
exactly. It's the little moments.
Right.
What about you? What has been your most rewarding part of having the
Oh,
podcast?
well, thank you for the question. First of all, I'm always used to like not having to think of an answer. So now you put me on the spot. The most rewarding, oh my gosh, I don't know. I feel like every day, again, to echo what you just said, the fact that I get to come here and I get to talk to people like you, um, who otherwise our paths probably wouldn't have crossed, and learn, and then someone's listening and hopefully they get something out of it. So then I'll get a message that says, that episode was wonderful, or through that episode I met, this person and I reached out. So all those little things, they make me so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Actually,
that.
I have you just reminded me, we had a guest. I won't mention names, to keep their anonymity, but we had a guest that was on the episode for something unrelated to her professional life, and she went on to apply for a big position in her professional life, and somehow the people interviewing her found her episode, and it kind of shed this whole new light on her, and they let her know. So that was really exciting. Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. That was very exciting when she told me, when she called and said that her employers loved the fact that she had this other side to her. And
I
they got
love
to see
that.
her, behind the mic and talking and expressing herself. So that was a cool one. Yeah.
Yeah, you made a real impact in her life.
I mean, I don't know. I think she did it all on her own, but I was just happy to be there.
Right, that's true. I mean, there's a bunch of different
Right.
factors, but I mean, especially when you're hiring people, this is another hard thing about startups, hiring.
Right.
You want to have people that you also like to work with. Obviously, they need to be qualified. So, and you don't always get the chance to meet the different side of them.
That's true.
So, this must have been really exciting for the employer.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, it goes without saying she got the job, and
Congrats to
she's,
her.
yeah, and she's, moving on to bigger and better adventures and having a wonderful life. So I was just happy that I was somehow a part of it. I was
Wonderful.
ecstatic. But so thank you for that question. That was really nice for me to think about. Um, can you tell me about the ambassador program?
Sure. So, this is something new and something we're really excited about. So, one of the things we were brainstorming is how can we, or let's back up a step. I think I told you about the Women in Web3 group in
Yes,
Miami, or mentioned it
with
briefly.
Michelle
Hmm.
Abs.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know her?
No, I don't.
Oh,
I
just great
just
memory.
yeah, I remember you mentioned it, and I feel like I've heard her name before you mentioned it. So it's
Probably.
stuck. Yeah.
She's like a power woman in Miami.
Nice.
Um, so one thing that we loved about this group is how it was very, it was the safe space where you could learn so much from each other, you could ask questions, you could make friendships, and it made us feel really engaged.
Mm.
And so we were thinking, okay, how can we get our product to more people and empower them? And we use social media, but it's like harder to become, personal.
Right.
And there's so many people around the world who are interested or have certain knowledge in crypto who want to teach their friends, and everyone always comes to them and is like, "Hey, you're my crypto go-to friend. Like, what is happening now?
Yeah.
Why is Bitcoin down? Like, have you heard of this new coin? What do you
What do
think?
I do?
What should I invest in?"
Yeah.
And so what we did is, okay, why don't we empower those leaders that are already leaders in their communities, in their friend groups, and give them the educational materials, guidelines for workshops to teach the people around them more about crypto, more about NFTs, how to use data to become self-sufficient,
Mhm.
become that person that other people come to. And specifically, we also wanted to bring more women into the space. So it's also
I
like
love that.
entrepreneurship and empowerment. And so we have opened our applications, and we've seen so much interest of people who want to become ambassadors in their circles all over the world, in Japan, in Europe,
Oh, that's
in
so
South
fun.
America, America, of course. I mean, the US. Sorry about that. um, so yeah, that's what the ambassador program is. So basically modeled after um, the lean in circle. So lean in, I don't know if you're familiar, was like a big, or is a big feminist movement, and they create circles where women can just create a circle in their communities and then talk about the content
Mhm.
that's provided by the foundation. So yeah, that's what the ambassador program is. It's focused on teaching people how to use data and how to become more comfortable in the crypto space in a community that they feel safe in.
Right. I think that's so smart. It's brilliant. Because like you said, we most of us have that friend that we're already going to. So the fact that now you guys are integrating all of that is seamless. It's really, really nice. Yeah,
Yeah, we're really excited about it. And I think it's a good way to also build community
for sure.
and strengthen community as well.
Right. Especially now that our world is somewhat back to normal. It feels like it's trying to go back to normal. The fact that, yeah, right, we're hoping, crossing our fingers. The fact that now people are seeking more, face to face
Mm,
interactions, and you're tapping into those communities that already exist and being able to have the tools that you're providing. I think it's really important. Yeah.
absolutely. I love what you said about us wanting more face to face, and
Yeah,
we're social creatures. It
we
just makes
are.
sense.
We are. And yeah, we see the value in crypto and all these things, but we can't forget the foundation, which is us to begin with. So the fact that we're putting all of that together, I think it's for the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's going to take a lot of that fear away that we talked about earlier, and those barriers to entry,
Right.
because there's already trust established.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
And whoever's starting on their crypto journey doesn't all of a sudden feel so alone, or, the fact that it's just them and this online stuff that they don't even know how to begin digesting. There's already a familiar face, hopefully.
exactly.
Yeah. So,
So that's really what we envision the crypto space to be. It's supposed to be by the people for the people. I
yes.
mean, realistically, of course, there's, especially now in the markets, a lot of institutional investment. And the retail investor, which means, individuals, are not as involved anymore, or just pausing, I guess, because of um, the geopolitical uncertainties with the Russian-Ukrainian war, etc., and inflation. But it's a period that we've been seeing a lot of people using to educate themselves and to get ready to get set up and dive into it. So it's not, exclusively just humans, people interacting. It's also funds and companies and governments, that hold and trade crypto. But it's important not to leave the people behind,
Yeah,
because otherwise it's just a replica of what we already have.
exactly. I
And that's
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for saying that. That's so important. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing with us. And we look forward to seeing what you all accomplish and all the amazing things coming your way.
Thank you for having me.
My
I
pleasure.
really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope um, the listeners do too.
Me
And I'm
too.
excited to stay in touch. I mean,
Yes.
made a new friend today.
Yes. Cheers to that. Yeah.
Yes. So I appreciate it. And yeah, if anyone wants to learn more about DeFi Trends, we have a website, defytrends.io, or DeFi_Trends on Twitter or the social medias. We're super reachable. So I'm
Yes.
happy to.
And you're all very approachable too. You're all very helpful.
Thank you.
So we'll make sure to have everything linked down below so that it can be easy access. And yeah, I highly encourage everybody to reach out to you, ladies, for further information because it's what you're doing. I feel like I sound like a broken record, but it's amazing, and I support it.
Thank